Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Medicinal Monday episode. I'm Dr. Susanna Alter.
And it's Dr. Benjamin here.
And we're both naturopathic doctors who support individuals in reversing disease and reclaiming optimal health through whole food, plant-based nutrition and mind-body medicine.
So we've got another great topic to cover in today's Medicinal Monday, and that is blood sugar and natural remedies to help control and manage blood sugar. Of course, the most important being our whole food plant-based nutrition, but we're going to get into some nitty-gritty nuances as far as blood sugar is concerned, because this is a really important topic, especially for a lot of people in our plant-based and stress-free community. And that is, of course, where we record these episodes live, in addition to the YouTube channel. So hello, all of those live attendees. And before we dive in, we do have our announcement.
Yes, our big announcement is that tonight we are kicking off the Whole Food Plant-Based Challenge, the Heart Attack Proof series. So we're going to dive into...
I've been calling it the Heart Attack Proof Challenge.
Heart Attack Proof Challenge. There you go. Yes. So I'm actually really glad that we are talking about blood sugar regulation today, because I know there are a lot of new members in the group that came in for this challenge who have the goal of reversing type 2 diabetes or managing their blood sugar. And it's not really the focus of the challenge. So we definitely wanted to highlight it here in this Medicinal Monday. And, you know, the community voted on the topic. The topic this week was natural plant remedies. And like 50 people voted for it. And we were like, we went to school for 4 years to learn that.
Yeah. Which aspect of the 10,000 hours or whatever should we dive in? So we're diving into the natural plant remedies for blood sugar regulation, control, preventing, reversing type 2 diabetes, but also optimally managing type 1 diabetes, because let's face it, that's very important as well. So yeah, before we dive in, I actually took some notes just of some prior podcast episodes, because we have covered these topics to some extent a number of times. The first real one was with Robbie Barbaro, I believe his name is, of Mastering Diabetes. That was Alter Your Health episode number 68. And then we talked a lot about sugar and cancer with Dr. Patrick Vickers, who's a kind of expert practitioner of the Gerson therapy, which has everything to do with sugar and optimal metabolism of sugar. So that was episode number 72. And then a great one with Cyrus, which is Robbie's sidekick of Mastering Diabetes, Cyrus Kambata. And that was episode number 174. And then a more recent one where we talk all about carbohydrates in episode number 201. So now we're going to get a little bit nuanced into, again, the topic of managing, controlling, optimizing blood sugar with plant remedies. And of course, the biggest remedy is the plants that we are just chewing on and putting in our mouth. And when we understand the root cause of blood sugar dysregulation, that really helps us to make informed decisions about the plants and other stuff that we might choose to put in our mouth in terms of our nutrition. So, you know, I learned a lot from Cyrus and Robbie about the root cause of blood sugar dysregulation and type 2 diabetes, that being, of course, insulin resistance. And we've said it a number of times, we're saying it again, the root cause of insulin resistance is dietary fat that accumulates within our bodies, specifically interfering with the proper signaling that allows for insulin to make its way to the insulin receptor and open up the floodgates for glucose, for sugar, to come from the bloodstream into the cell. That, of course, leads to high blood sugar. If the sugar is not able to get into the cell, then it's got to stay in the blood, right? So that then you prick your finger and you measure your capillary blood glucose, and it says it's 147 or 202 or 453 or whatever it is, and it's high. Like, what is the sugar doing in your blood why isn't the sugar in the cell where it needs to be in order to be converted into cellular energy? And the reason is 100% of the time, the reason is intramyocellular fat, the fat accumulated within the cells interfering with proper insulin signaling.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is why eating a whole food plant-based, well, I shouldn't say diet, living a whole food plant-based lifestyle really is the most effective way to reverse insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. And, it's funny because we get this question all the time, but oh, well, I'm interested in eating plant-based, but I have blood sugar issues. And so I can't eat all the potatoes and I can't eat all the fruit because my doctor told me I need to stay away from those, high glycemic foods.
Yeah, right. Exactly. In fact, came to my awareness that we're in the midst of the Alter Health summer cleanse. I guess it is summer because I'm sweating. The summer cleanse, and it's going really well. And there was a question in the cleanse of, my blood sugar has been a little bit all over the place. My doctor says maybe I should quit the cleanse for now until my blood sugar gets stabilized. And it's a tricky thing because the fact is the high carbohydrate, high starch, whole plant foods that are naturally low in fat are the key foods to prevent and reverse blood sugar dysregulation. But in the short term, when we have insulin resistance and we eat a banana, we eat an orange, we have a smoothie, we have some potatoes, we have rice and beans, what happens is we are going to see an elevation of blood sugar, and that elevation may stay elevated for some period of time because, again, there is the fat accumulated within the cells that is interfering with the proper insulin signaling and the proper uptake of the sugars from those foods. And as the fat is kind of cleared from the cell over a course of, it really starts happening in one day, in one meal, it starts happening. But as it continues to happen over days, weeks, maybe for some people a month or two, then our insulin signaling is optimized and we can drink all the smoothies and eat all the potatoes and eat all the white rice or brown rice or beans or whatever it might be in terms of the carbohydrate rich, high starch foods that are optimally fueling our body. But in that interim, in that kind of transition period where people are still kind of struggling with controlling the blood sugar, there are some things to know. So I think that's kind of the focus here, again, in the nuanced conversation about blood sugar regulation with whole food plant-based eating. What are the things that we can do to really optimize blood sugar as we are transitioning into whole food plant-based lifestyle, allowing our our cells to cleanse themselves of the accumulated fat and allowing the insulin sensitivity to be optimized.
Great. Well, yeah, I think we should really start the conversation from a more foundational place because that's really where healing happens, right? And so we know that we want to eat a whole food plant-based diet to reverse insulin resistance at this point, right?
All right, we've said it 7 or 8 times just in the last 8 minutes. So,
yes, but how do we ease that transitional period when someone might still have that insulin resistance on the cellular level?
Yeah. So from a nutritional standpoint, I know, Dr. Susanna, you and I agree, and the science suggests that really fiber is the name of the game, the most important thing. So while Dr. Susanna and we have been in the course of our cleanse eating smoothies like 2 or 3 times a day, and these smoothies are, of course, whole foods, whole fruits and vegetables blended up in a smoothie, chopping up the fiber and really getting direct access at those nutrients as well as at those sugars, which are in the fruits and vegetables. And kind of we're still taking in some fiber, but the fiber is kind of broken up and chopped up, not the whole long intact fibers that are going to slow the digestion, slow the absorption of the sugars and nutrients that are locked into in those whole plants. So we have been eating and drinking smoothies a lot, especially on the cleanse, of course, like I just said. But for someone who is looking to control their sugar and is maybe pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetic and has this insulin resistance going on, it is in fact best to chew the whole intact fibers. So eating the bananas, eating the oranges, eating the mango. And the most powerful thing also, in addition to eating those whole intact fruits, is eating them along with some leafy greens. Leafy greens are one of they're superfoods, if we can use that term. And what makes them superfoods in this case are the phytonutrients in the greens, as well as the fiber that is really going to help optimize and slow down and harmonize the digestion and absorption of the sugars and nutrients from those whole fruits.
Yeah. So that's the first, one big point. And similar to that, we would also want to be mindful of really, I guess, concentrated forms of carbohydrates. Not. So I know that you made a face like, wait,
no,
what?
I'm waiting for you to complete your sentence.
Just like dried fruit. Potatoes are still good, whole fresh fruit, still good, but dried fruit is so much more concentrated. And, once a person reverses their insulin resistance, bring in the dried fruit. But for people who are in that kind of transition period, it's best to leave the dried fruit out.
So the first thing is increasing fiber with every meal. Because I was going to say every carbohydrate rich meal, but when we're eating a whole food plant-based diet, every meal is carbohydrate rich. Yeah. So increasing the fiber and eating the intact foods. Mm-hmm. So along those lines of, avoiding things like dried fruit, avoiding things like fruit juices and to some extent fruit smoothies, like we said, but also, of course, more refined carbohydrates in the forms of pastas and breads, even if it's chickpea pasta or whole wheat pasta or whole grain bread or whatever it might be. Those are processed and refined grains that have lower fiber content than their intact whole grain counterpart cousins.
Right.
So yes, intact whole grains as opposed to processed refined grains, of course.
Yes. And then the third big thing, and this is a really big thing, is to be mindful of food combining, and specifically not pairing those carbohydrate-rich foods with a lot of fat-rich foods. Mm-hmm. And so because when we eat whole food plant-based, we are eating predominantly carbohydrate-rich foods, that means using those fat-rich foods as kind of like a condiment, for example, avocado, nuts and seeds, coconut, these things can really just be sprinkled over the bulk of the meal and not be the main centerpiece of the meal. And so it's so interesting because we worked with individuals who have the continuous glucometer. They're watching their blood glucose throughout the day, and they notice right away, if they increase the dietary fat content with their meal, their blood glucose will go higher and stay higher for a longer period of time. So it's, for a lot of people, this is a big mindset shift because they've been told to focus on a low carb diet, not a low fat diet, but it really is that fat that on a meal to meal basis can really influence our insulin sensitivity.
It does, for sure. And of course, we could launch into a whole side conversation about high fat diets and how they're really great and powerful at controlling blood sugar, managing blood sugar, I should say. But the moment we sneak in a grape or a slice of orange or a banana or a few beans or grains of rice or, all these great, whole plant foods, then our blood sugar is going to spike because we're accelerating the insulin resistance by eating too many high fat foods.
Yeah.
I was going to say also, like, in terms of the fiber conversation, greens are probably the most powerful fiber source to kind of harmonize the digestion and absorption process of the carbohydrate rich foods, but also beans. Beans and greens are really the two kind of superfoods for blood sugar control. So really, I mean, if I were really serious about reversing type 2 diabetes, I would eat greens and beans at every meal. That's kind of what I would do. And then, of course, everything else would be, fruits or vegetables, right? But I guess fruits and beans don't pair that well. So maybe fruits intact as snacks with some greens and or beans at every meal. How about that?
Sounds good. I like that plan.
Cool. So that's kind of the nutritional backbone in a nutshell, right? Did we miss anything?
Those are the main points for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the natural remedies, because that, when we're talking about natural remedies here at Alter Health, Dr. Suzanne and I were always talking about the foundation of health, which a lot of you are maybe exposed to through some of these podcasts and Thrive on Plants and things like that. These are the foundation of health, of course, includes things like food, air, water, movement and sleep, our kind of mindset and our relationships and our connection with self and purpose. That's where the healing happens, right? But as we're focusing on creating that foundation of health, there's all sorts of tools and, might I say, quote unquote, supplements that we can kind of use to support and manage our symptoms as we're kind of fortifying that foundation of health. And Dr. Suzanne and I, we always, not always, but we often kind of jump to some supplements for ourselves to kind of orient our health in more optimal ways. Most of the time it's kind of quote unquote food-based supplements and extracts and herbs and things like that. But in any case, in the context of blood sugar control, there's lots of powerful stuff. So what's at the top of your list?
Well, I would just like to preface, I know you already kind of did this, but I just want to preface this conversation by saying, we're going to talk about some supplements, because that's kind of what you guys wanted to hear about herbal remedies or whatever. But the thing is, all of these things we're going to talk about won't really help unless you do the foundational stuff, unless you really optimize nutrition and other aspects of lifestyle. So this is like a little bonus on top. It's like once you've got the foundation set, then maybe this can also just speed things along. However, there's also, I'd like to also say that some of this stuff works because it has a hypoglycemic effect. It lowers blood sugar. So it's like, we also need to be cautious of some of these things too, because if we switch to a whole food plant-based diet and we've reversed the insulin resistance and everything is going well and we're still taking these supplements, then we might actually push ourselves into more of a hypoglycemic state where we don't want to be. So, I just wanted to preface that, with these supplements.
Okay. You did it.
I made the point.
Well, what's at the top of your list of these supplements, Dr. Susanna?
Well, I think that the research on berberine is super cool.
I was actually prepared to talk most about berberine as well.
Okay, well then you talk about it.
Okay. Well, as far as I know, as far as the research suggests, berberine actually acts very similarly to metformin, which is, of course, oftentimes a first-line pharmaceutical medication for the management of blood sugar. And actually, there's interesting research about kind of extending longevity using metformin. It's one of very few pharmaceutical agents that don't really have long-term negative side effects or consequences. Metformin, that is. But berberine, the completely natural alternative plant-derived substance, there's construction out the window. We'll close the window, even though it's freaking sauna in here. So berberine, the way that it acts is actually upregulation of the GLUT transporters, independent of insulin. So berberine does kind of, to some extent, what insulin does, kind of taking the load off of insulin and increasing insulin sensitivity, regardless of the intramyocellular fat. So that's one thing that it does. And then it does some things for the gut and the microbiome that are, of course, connected with our metabolism. What else?
No, that sounds good.
Okay. Cool. So berberine is a cool one. Is a good one.
Yeah.
It's a thing. It's also antimicrobial, it's got, anyways.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the next thing I would bring up is cinnamon, because it's a food. And I really like to focus on more of the food stuff that we can bring in on a regular basis. And so,
and berberine is spelled Berberine. Berberine.
Yep.
Berberine.
Yeah. So cinnamon is just a great herb that has been shown to help with that blood sugar regulation. And I don't really know the mechanism off the top of my head, or if the mechanism is actually even understood.
Maybe I just made this up, and someone can definitely comment and correct us. But My understanding is that maybe cinnamon is a good dose of chromium, which is often also used in supplemental form to control and manage blood sugar. And chromium also helps in the insulin sensitivity of our cells. So there's all these kind of things that help manage and improve insulin sensitivity. But take-home message, far and away the most powerful thing to improve insulin sensitivity is allowing the body to get rid of the excess fat. And the only way to do that is to eat a whole food plant-based diet that is naturally low in fat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, fenugreek. If any of you know fenugreek, it's an herb. It has a hypoglycemic effect. It is very high in fiber. And so it is thought that fiber really helps to, control the absorption of glucose into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
So that's another one. And yeah, it's funny because as we're going through these, maybe you can sense in my tone that it's like, I'm not that excited going through this list of supplements because it's not as powerful as the lifestyle medicine. I mean, I think there are a lot of doctors out there who would put people on a low carb diet and then say, here, take the chromium, take the berberine, take the fenugreek, take the vanadium, take the this, take the that,
Oh, yeah, vanadium.
Vanadium.
So yeah, chromium and vanadium are two minerals that, as far as I know, like the studies suggest that people who do have type 2 diabetes often have chromium and or vanadium deficiencies. And whether that is causative or of type 2 diabetes or more of an effect of type 2 diabetes is not quite understood as far as I know. But in any case, oftentimes chromium and vanadium, two minerals, are used to help improve insulin sensitivity. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I must agree, Dr. Susanna, that I'm not that enthusiastic about these kind of supplements either, besides berberine, because I think it's kind of interesting what that does for longevity. But that being said, on the topic of berberine, if berberine is so powerful in improving longevity through its way of kind of controlling and optimizing metabolism, then where my mind goes is that eating whole food plant-based to control and optimize metabolism and improve insulin sensitivity is even more powerful than berberine. Or what if, and this is something I'm actually experimenting with, because Dr. Susanna, for some reason, a few months ago, bought a bottle of berberine and I've been using it. It's hard to say what it's doing for me because I'm not measuring my blood sugar or anything like that, but I'm just using it because I'm seeing if I'm open to.
Is it to support energy or to support?
Actually, berberine reduces energy because it makes your metabolism go through energy more quickly. So I should say it reduces kind of exercise performance sort of energy.
But you want more exercise performance energy.
So you can dose berberine after exercise and still have good exercise performance. Okay. In theory and based on the science. And to be honest, I don't know the milligram dosage of berberine. I think it's
I'm pretty sure it's like 500 3 times a day for that metformin effect. But this is something I think you'd want to talk with your doctor about.
Yeah.
Because berberine is not an herb like cinnamon. It's more has a stronger therapeutic effect in the body.
So anyways, if you guys have any other ideas about managing blood sugar in terms of herbs, remedies, stuff like that, beyond whole food plant-based nutrition, beyond keeping fiber intake and nutrient density high, beyond keeping carbohydrate status up and fat status down, feel free to reach out.
Yeah. Well, Mary, you have a great suggestion here. Would drinking Beeler's broth daily be good for reversing type 2 diabetes?
So Mary must be on the cleanse with us, and I know she is. Yeah.
Yes. So Beeler's broth is one of the recipes in one of our cleanses, or in our cleanse, and it is a very detoxifying herb. It is
soup. It's not an herb.
Oh yeah, soup. But it has parsley in it, which is a very detoxifying herb. And it'd be great if your mom can't, chew the raw plants very much. It's a great way to bring in a lot of minerals and.
Yeah, totally. For people who have digestive issues as well. As
part of a whole food plant-based diet, of course.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect to, eat McDonald's cheeseburgers, French fries, and then have some Beeler's broth and experience that radical of an effect. But it certainly will offset a lot of the negative things that we might be exposed to.
Yeah. And that really is the big message that we will say for the 1500th time
Just
in this
today.
episode. Yes, is that you really can't reverse blood sugar issues with a pill, with an herb, with a magic bullet.
Yeah.
You really got to change the lifestyle. And specifically in the whole food plant-based lifestyle, you really need to be mindful. Make sure you are eating lots of fiber. Make sure you're staying away from the dietary fat.
Especially oils. I mean, we didn't even say anything about oils, but of course, oils are pure fat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, being mindful of the most concentrated processed forms of the carbohydrates and leaving those out as well.
So, yeah. Hopefully we're not, bumming two people out with our lack of magic pills here.
Okay, one thing I can get excited about is amla powder, and that's because it is a whole food. It's just been dehydrated and powdered, and amla is really helpful on top of a whole food plant-based diet, is also very helpful for the glycemic control and also for liver support and vitamin C content and a lot of things. So I can get behind amla for sure.
Yeah. We'll get behind one magic pill or one magic powder. But the magic is in the plants, really, the entirety of the whole food plant-based lifestyle.
Yes.
So thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for diving deep into the topic of blood sugar regulation and the nuances related to that. And we look forward to seeing a lot of you this evening in the whole food plant-based heart attack proof challenge. And until next time.
Bye for now.
Peace.